I'm really happy with how Elkhorn is turning out so far. It really is thriving. The landscaping, the foliage, the rock work. And both animals, old and new, are making their way back into the zoo very slowly. And now it's time to take care of probably the most important people that walk through the zoo's doors, and that is the guests. That's what I was talking about last time, and that's what we're going to be working on in this episode of Planet Renovate. Hello everybody and welcome back to Elkhorn Valley Reserve. Thank you for joining me and thank you for your support on the last video as always. Now speaking of the last video, I may have said this. I'm going to be doing the sightline video. Hold me to it. The next video on this channel will be the sightline video. If it's anything other than that, feel free to come back and dislike this video because I have to be held accountable for my actions. However, I'm going to ask you to forgive me on this occasion, and that is because I really want that video to be the best that it can be for you guys. I'm struggling a little bit to convey the messages I want to sort of make it as informative as possible and not seem like a lecture. You know me, I hate the term tutorial. I don't want it to seem like a tutorial. I want it to seem like a guide, a way to help you sort of incorporate those points into your current zoos instead of having to start new zoos in future. But this video, however, is going to be about the guests. I did say in the last video that I wanted to start working on the guest area back here, so you can see I've done a little bit of work with just a little bit of benches and some messing around with some pathing and stuff, and you'll see the beaver habitat's had a little bit of a change. I'm going to be pushing this back this way a little bit. The boardwalk or boardwalk has gone as well, so that's going to be something I'm going to have to revisit and redo at some point, but it might be that I don't bother with that boardwalk just because I think they're really awkward and ugly to try and hide when you've got those curbs on elevated paths and you can't turn those off even with free build. So it is what it is. But yeah, I want this to start being the start of the built up areas. So I want, obviously what we've been doing on this side so far is sort of quite low key and quite rural, and we've only been operating out of these little food shacks and little information kiosks and undecorated toilets. But I really want this to start feeling like the part where this is a newer section and you really get that feeling that it's a newer section, and the zoo side maybe having some investment made into it from maybe outside sources and whatnot. And yeah, I just want this, there's a certain feel that I want this to have, and I really think that this is going to be the best place to be able to do it. It's far enough from the entrance that I think it's going to be warranting a lot of stuff that it's going to have here. But yeah, got some grand ideas, but I'm going to jump ahead and we will have a look at what I can get done for this first jump cut. So here we are after the first update, and it's quite a big one. It's quite a big jump, and that is because, as you can see on the left here, we've got our first shop in, and I was going to go for a restaurant originally, but I decided, you know what? No, we'll go for something a bit more. I think one of the things that I've struggled with Paws is that I don't know whether it actually felt like it was in England, so I really want this to feel like America. And what's more American than a Wendy's or a Starbucks or something like that? We're also going to get some Dippin' Dot stands and stuff like that in here, so I think this is, for me, something that screams America. So it's definitely something that I'm liking the look of. I have to thank Christina, obviously, for the amazing logos and the font. But the actual building itself is my own architectural design, which I'm kind of regretting because obviously this front bit has a curve to it and there's a bit of wall sticking out there that I'll fix in a moment. But I just tried to go I tried to make it look as modern and detailed as I can while using as minimal amount of pieces as I can. So it's a lot of metal beam pieces, a lot of wood, Arctic or aquatic wood pieces as well. We've got full stops on the glass though for things like bird spots to stop birds from flying into the windows and whatnot. So I'm trying to keep it as minimalistic but realistic as possible because, like I say, this is going to be the first shop of about probably 3 that are going to be in this whole area. I'm going to be doing an adjacent building here. So we've got behind here, I've managed to get all my there's a toilet here as well that I'm gonna just hide in the back of the Starbucks as well. And then we've got this generator here as well that I'm gonna put a service road down to, so there's gonna be a fence, and then the staff are gonna be able to walk down here to be able to get to bits at the back here. With the restaurant next door, I think I might just make it a rabbit hole. I think I might just build a shell of a building and just place a restaurant inside it, and then we'll have all of the seating outside so that some people, well, I'll put some seating inside, but I'll put some seating outside as well, just so that people are actually going to be using it, and it will look like it's being used, even if you can't see in the windows. And then another thing I was thinking about, and I don't quite know where I can put it, but I think this would be a really good area for it, is like a carousel. I think another thing that's quite evocative of American zoos, from what I've been told, is that they usually have a carousel, and I'm pretty sure that Christina's got a carousel on the workshop as well, which I'll probably have a little bit of a look at. But I don't want, if I can get one that's like themed, where it has maybe like pronghorns or bison or American animals, then that'd be absolutely amazing. If not, then it is what it is. But yeah, I think it's really nice. It's framing this area quite nicely. I remember when we had this area before, and we had just the lodge and the bison habitat. We didn't have any of this going on to the side. So now that we're starting to get this view built up with the Starbucks on the left, and then obviously we'll have something to the left as well behind the Starbucks, and the carousel on the right, potentially in that sort of middle of the screen section. Yeah, really excited to see where this goes, and yeah, I'll let you know. I'll have a look for a quick carousel, and we'll put that in, and then I'll talk to you a bit more about what I'm going to be planning for this shop, basically. But yeah, I'll catch you in a second. Right, I'm now back, and as you can see, we have a amazing carousel, and once again provided by the amazing Christina. I think the reason I end up opting for this one in the end is that some of the animals are actually quite fit into the area. So we've obviously got like sea lions, they're going to be making an appearance in here. These I think are supposed to be lions, but I'm going to pretend that they're pumas. We've got some horses here, which obviously are quite evocative of America as well. So yes, we have some things like giraffes and elephants, but you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is. But that's not the only thing I've been doing. I've been trying to break up the space as well, because obviously in the previous section, this area was just very open, and I just want to make it feel busier. And while that's easily accomplished by just adding more rubbish, I think the best way of doing it is just breaking up the space. So we've got like a planter here and a planter back there. We'll have a look at that in a second. And I started getting a few different shops in as well. I managed to transfer one of them from over here. So we've taken the kiosk that was from back here, and we've moved it over to the other side as well. It does mean I have to find a new place for the information stand and the toilets. The toilets, I might be able to wrangle them in somewhere around here. Like, I don't think this raccoon habitat is actually going to be this big, so I could just take them out and move them somewhere else. But this area is looking really nice now. I mean, as you're coming up here, you've got people using balloons. It's a bit congested, but obviously once we expand the park in that direction, the number of guests that are going to be in the zoo is going to be staying the same, but they're going to just be spread over a bigger section of the zoo. But also what doesn't help is that this is pretty much one of the only areas in the zoo you can get food and drink at this point. So this Starbucks is absolutely rammed at the moment. I have done a little bit of interior work thanks to Toves. Toves had like a coffee store set that he made, so I've just used like the window sort of table bench things here. That's helped just decorate a little bit. It does still feel like I can probably do more with this, but I think it's going to come more from like the wall decorations than anything else. So this area here looks quite nice, but once you sort of turn around and you get to here, it just all becomes a bit of a mess. So I really do like this carousel, by the way. I think Christina absolutely smashed it out of the park with this. So, and I have added like a really corny music into the game to a speaker inside of the carousel, but I'm going to mute that for the purposes of like the recording, and I'll just like give you some little cinematics at the end where I just don't speak it, or we don't have any music, and you can just hear the ambient sounds of like the guests enjoying themselves. You might be able to catch some wolves and stuff in the background. And here's something that I thought was a little bit nicer. Obviously behind me we've got the contrast of like this franchise multi-million pound company, and then on this side I just wanted something a bit more low-key, so we've got like a little tiny loony balloon stand. I'm going to try and make some of those like tall helium cylinders, so that obviously they've got somewhere to actually fill the balloons up from, because at the moment it just looks like they just pull a balloon out. So we've got these like boxes that are going to have balloons in that the person will turn around and get, and I've tried to go with this like I say, minimalist. So we've got this wooden table with like what looks like just an oversized cloth just draped over the top of it, and I really like how that looks. Like I said, around the back of the carousel we've got the old shack as well, with the water and Chief Beef. As it stands, Chief Beef is the only place we can actually get food, so I'm gonna have to get the restaurant done sooner or later if we want to stop people from like getting a bit upset and whatnot. But and then like a bench planter along here with some more benches as well. The thing I think that I'm going to struggle with the most is going to be incorporating the existing habitats into this plaza. So at the moment, it's just very disjointed. So you go from this sort of built up, very heavily concreted area into this. But I think I can potentially get it to work this side. I've already started looking at this side where I'm going to get the beaver put in. And you can see here, I've started adding a path in. So from here, this path back here is going to get taken out. And this path here is going to be the main way to get across now. So where I've obviously blocked off the water here, we're going to... It just gives us a bit more room. I don't want to have like another bridge. I don't want to have any more like boardwalks or anything like that. I literally just want the ground to be flush, you know. So, well, not flush, but I just want everything to be flush to the ground. So I'll probably end up carrying on this like retaining wall along the whole side here until it meets up with the monorail track. But generally this is where the beaver habitat is going to go. So obviously when I take this path out, I'm going to have a bit more space to work with. I'll probably take this out now, to be honest with you, but yeah, I'll do that in a second. Like I say, this path will literally join up here. I can then start finishing the bison habitat, their indoor bit. I've used the reindeer shelter for now because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the reindeer shelter out of their habitat, and I will end up using the Arctic dome to provide them with their interior shelter, basically. But you can see here, like, even when you're coming back on yourself here, I think you're going to get a really nice view of the plaza as you walk along. I just think it's such a nice center point. And then once I do some like planting along here as well, I think just from a bird's eye view, if we fly up really quick, I just think it looks really nice. Like I say, once it's blended in, just looks like a bit of a mess here where I've got these different paths going off here and there, and then we've got these other paths doing random bits. Yeah, but I think I'm going to actually try and include that in this episode, even if it's just the surroundings of the beaver habitat rather than just doing the whole habitat. But the main focus really is going to be on this as a whole, because I just want to get the guest area done, somewhere for the guests to just get food, drink, get some information, nice chill space. And yeah, right, scratch everything I've just said. I'm actually going to be placing this restaurant here temporarily. I'm not going to be decorating it. I'm actually going to let you decide. Let me know what you think this restaurant should be, theme-wise, name-wise. It can be fictional or non-fictional. But yeah, I just really think it's a good way to incorporate one of you into this area, and we'll like maybe name the restaurant after you as well, if that's something you want to do and that you want to include that as part of the name. But yeah, let me know and I'll be glad to do that. But we're actually going to be focusing on something else in this episode, and that's going to be the beaver habitat, just because I want to see if I can incorporate it as part of this area like I'm originally thinking. So this section is going to be made up of sort of just a small collaboration of speed builds, but me just explaining each process as I go. And step number one, and it was very ambitious when I thought about it, but it actually works because of PC Plus. I actually wanted a functional lodge. So beavers build dams, and those dams are known as lodges. And they don't just hold beavers, they can sometimes hold other animals as well, and they sort of form this like symbiotic relationship. So the other animals that live in that lodge will help provide either like a service, or they'll bring something or maintain the dam as well. And for that, the beavers will basically tolerate them and let them live there for free. It's actually kind of a cool thing that happens in nature, where you sometimes have these like symbiotic relationships between different animals. But I'm going through here, and I had a dam that I already had from this map, and that's what you can see me sort of tampering with here. The original wooden structure was what I had, and I'm just like, okay, so I need to make this sort of quite grand and have a mix of different materials. So it's going to be like mainly wood, obviously, because that's what they'll use to build them. I'm going to be using a bunch of mulch pieces, as you can see me using here, just to help pad it out as well. Obviously they use mud in real life because it's what they'll use as like a binding agent to keep all of it together. and then I go over it and decorate it with a little bit of foliage as well. But the real difficult part that I had at the end was trying to make it navigable, because originally what I wanted was it to be true to life of how beavers actually enter their lodges or dams. And that is that the entrance to it is actually underwater. So if they want to get inside of it, they have to go dive underneath into a passage and then up into the dam. But because of how PZ works, that isn't something you can do, to my knowledge. I did try it. I had the water depth requirements at all of the correct levels. Thank you to Kingpin, by the way, for sending me this picture of the deep dive requirements for each of the animals, so I knew how deep I had to make it before the beavers would go under and then come back up. But I think I've managed to get a good compromise, and that is by using my old friend, the creosote bush. The creosote bush masks the entrance, so while they don't deep dive, it does look like they disappear into the dam, and that is because they are actually going to be inside the dam, which I think is really cool. And I think it's one of the things I do when I'm building these habitats. I want each of them to have like unique selling point, unique thing that makes them, even though these are beavers and not as cool as say like the bears and the wolves, I think each animal needs its own little thing that makes it just that little bit cooler and a bit of an experience to visit each habitat. But now that the lodge itself was done, I needed the means to be able to see the lodge, and obviously we're going to have the viewing from the guest plaza that we've just been working on, but I kind of wanted a way that you could maybe see them underwater as well. And here I'm just going to add like a little outcropping viewing area. You've seen me do this in Paws a load of times. Things like the Lynx had this type of thing where you had the main path that went by, but you just had this little like outcropping to the side where you could just dip down and have a little look at the animals in another capacity, or you could just carry on if perhaps you wasn't interested in that. And that's something I wanted to get here, and I really wanted the dam to be the main focus of this viewpoint. However, I'm going to procrastinate, and that's because the thought of doing the edges of this habitat really was something that I was not looking forward to. So I added in some enrichment items. We're using the dam piece here. I'm going to incorporate that as part of the dam, and then some spiral feeders, some of the herb enrichments as well. And then I move into what I do best, and that is copious placement of buffalo grass. The foliage palette for this habitat is pretty much going to be on par with the rest of what we've been doing. You know, a lot of buffalo grass, some green grass, creosote bushes, but I did end up using a bald cypress for this habitat, which is, I don't think it's something I've used as of yet in this game, and I think it really suits this habitat quite well, especially when I had a couple of them actually. I don't just place the one, I go a bit mental. I place two, I think. So yeah, and then I just go around and just try and make the foliage in keeping with the dam as well, so that it's all tied together and doesn't seem separate. Another thing that's quite rare for me is use of reeds, but I have been using them in this. I have just not been using them as over the top as I had done when I first started playing this game, and that's because I think the textures on them aren't quite up to par as some of the later foliage, unfortunately. But that's just like a general problem that's going to be with this game, that over time the guys at Frontier have honed their skills, and stuff that they release later is just generally going to be a lot better. And then I just go around and just thicken up the grass. I was looking at it and it was a bit thin on the ground, so I'm just going around and just thickening it up a little bit, just so there's a little bit more ground coverage. Here's that bald cypress I was talking to you about as well. I really do like it. I think it's a really nice texture, but I think what I am going to have to do is, obviously, given that there are beavers in this habitat, an animal that has a proclivity for cutting down trees, probably going to have to cordon off these trees in some capacity so that they can't get to them. This one here will be fine, this beech tree, because obviously it's up on that raised concrete section. And then I just go around and just place a bunch of stumps just to show that the beavers have had previous conquests in this habitat. But as much as I wanted to avoid them, I had to go back and do the viewing points and the perimeter of this habitat, and I really like these. I think they turned out super unique. Each one's different. Obviously we've got the concrete one over on the side where all the guest amenities are, and the carousel. We've got this one which is right at the back of the habitat, which is a bit more rustic. And then we've got one about halfway along, which is the one I talked about already, which is basically the little outcropping one that's just off the main path. but we'll get onto that in just a second. I do end up using a log fence for this one. I thought it was quite fitting. Again, I don't have to how many times I have to say it. Beavers, they cut down wood. I thought the use of logs would be quite clever, but obviously I'm then thinking about in my mind, you've got to block this off, Blob. You can't just have it exposed for the beavers to gnaw at. So I go back and I end up adding some concrete banks at the foot of these, just to stop the beavers from again getting at it and just chewing through the wood and escaping their habitat, because that would be quite a problem. Obviously, I did rotate these and like drop them down just so that they're not all the same. You can see that in footage back in the background. But then I have moved on to what I was dreading the most because of the shape of it, and that was the third viewing area. That was the one that comes off the main path at an angle. And because it comes off at an angle, it means you're working with 45 degrees and you're working with triangles, which are shapes and angles that are never really that prevalent in Planet Zoo. So automatically, by tackling this, I knew I was in for a ride. But I actually really like how it turned out. I think by not worrying about solid shapes for the roof, I think it's really helped me with this, and it's just made it look that little bit nice. So I end up using the arbor pieces for the roof in the end, just to give it some cover, but also to make it just a lot easier to manage, because I think if I had tried to actually roof this like with a solid substance, I think it would have been just an absolute nightmare. But the main thing I'm really focused on here is this view. I want you to be able to see the dam in the background as you're like walking past it. I want it to be, I mean, we've got the one further up that gives you a better view of the dam, but I like this one because it's going to give you a better view of them swimming, because the view from the guest plaza is obviously going to be more focused on the land section. This is more focused on the water, and then the last one is going to be focused on the dam or the lodge. And here you can see this is where I've adopted the arbor piece as my roof of choice. Obviously, I then got to a problem where the pieces were too long, so I then alternated to this other one. At first, I was actually quite upset because, as you can see, these smaller pieces for some reason don't have the same coloration. I hate some of these earlier pieces in Planet Zoo because they don't have a base color and then they have a scuff color, whereas these just have one color, and that color is for the like the brown. So this beigey color that you can see, I can't change that. I can't do anything about that. So at first I was a bit upset because I was like, oh god, like this is now gonna look awful because it's got two different tones. But to be honest, when you're actually looking at it from the ground, which is, I mean, that's how I do most of my looking anyway, you can barely tell the difference. So I decided to stick with it. If it's something that I see at a later date and I think it does sort of bother me, then I probably will change this. But at the moment, I can sort of just let myself be tricked into liking it. But I then go through and add some detailing. So we're talking lamps. You just saw me add in some signs there, lion signs. Again, they make this zoo a zoo. I don't think without lion signs you would have any idea that what's going on here is a zoo unless you're physically standing in front of the habitats. But I just think that a whole point of a zoo is to sort of inform people, and I think that these signs do a really good job of that. I then jump back up to the guest plaza area and start doing the fencing for it. I then decide that I should probably do some sort of like canopy as well, or shade, just to stop people from, I mean, if it's raining, it gives somewhere like people somewhere to stand. But it was a little bit more finicky than I originally wanted, but I managed to get there in the end with it. And this is it. We're going to do a little bit of an overview of what we've done in this episode. This is our first viewing area. This is the Beaver #1 viewing. So this is sort of like just an overview of the whole thing. Love this view. I might get rid of this tree on the left because I think it actually kind of spoils the view a little bit because you can't see the waterfall from the bison pronghorn habitat. But other than that, really happy with it. We'll go around, and on the left-hand side here in a moment, we are going to catch a glimpse of the second viewing area. Like I say, I really love how this turned out. I think it's nice and quaint. It's not in the way, but it's not out the way as well. It's like incorporated quite nicely into the whole habitat. From here you get a better view of the waterfall, so this is where I'm sort of on the fence about maybe getting rid of the tree. And then last but not least, we've got our viewing of the back here. This is going to be like a better view of the dam more than anything. They do use this little enrichment piece here. I've sort of just been watching them, but you can view the bison and stuff at the back there as well.
Now, I do know that back there is a little bit disgusting to look at, the habitat barrier, but that's something I'm going to worry about off camera. I'm not gonna bore you with the details here, but this is going to be our big problem, is incorporating this ride here, and then we've got those two buildings as well that I want to get in, the generator and whatnot. And now here we are back at the absolutely amazing carousel. I couldn't be happier with this area. It's been such a transformation. You can see the bricks changed. I end up getting rid of that depressing grey concrete and battled with the pathing system to bring this whole area into the red brick era. I just think it makes it a lot more in keeping with the rest of the zoo. Obviously, the pathing leading up to this area uses the red brick. So I thought, why not keep it with that? And yeah, ended up changing it. I'll leave you now with some cinematics. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace out.